WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar. Good evening and thank you for staying tuned to West Africa, the Macross Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide at wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink First Day Headline Stories. Togolese security and defense forces received military hardware from Middle East to enhance operations.
The equipment handed over to the defense and security forces represent a significant contribution to strengthening the capacities of our units engaged on the ground.
Nigerian army denies any civilian casualties in recent airstrikes in northwest Zamfara state. External sessions of ECOWAS Court of Justice gets underway in Conakry to review regional litigation cases.
Although the court has existed since 2001, many citizens within the community are still unaware of its existence, its mandate, and its practices.
And President Mahama commissions new health facility to end overseas medical trips. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Sankulu Jibril Janko.
Thank you for joining the evening broadcast of Newslink, which begins with a focus on security issues. In Togo, the government is continuing to strengthen its security system in response to the terrorist threat. Authorities in Lomé recently received a delegation from the Islamic Military Counter-Terrorism Coalition based in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. During the visit, a significant batch of military equipment was handed over to the defense and security forces. Francis Boniface has the rest of the details.
The Riyadh delegation arrived in Togo and handed over sophisticated military hardware at a time when the country is facing growing security threats along its northern border with Burkina Faso. Among the equipment received were tactical gear, communication tools, protective equipment, and devices designed to improve the operational capacities of special units involved in the fight against terrorism and violent extremism. Colonel Kalis Batosi Madulba is Togolese Minister of Security and Civil Protection.
The equipment handed over to the defense and security forces, including tactical vests, ballistic plates, combat helmets, and deployment gear, represent a significant contribution to strengthening the capacities of our units engaged on the ground. Beyond their material value, this equipment, above all, conveys a strong message of solidarity, brotherhood, and shared responsibility in the face of a threat that affects us all.
The handover of the equipment also marks the launch of the Support Initiative, a program intended for forces involved in counter-terrorism efforts through the provision of military supplies. The authorities hope this assistance will improve the readiness of forces deployed on the ground and strengthen the security of populations in sensitive areas.
A report voiced by Francis Boniface. In Mali, households, traders, transporters, and other layers of the nation's economy continue to face difficulties and financial losses due to roadblocks erected by genuine fighters, leading to Bamako. This anti-state measure by the armed group has been in place since the April 25 coordinated attacks. Supply of consumer goods and interstate travel have been severely disrupted by several trucks, and commercial buses have been attacked or set on fire. Around the Medina Kura market, people impacted by the new economic and security crisis spoke to WDR. Abdullah Hassan has more in this report.
Just around midday at the Medina Kura market in Bamako, a few trucks arriving from Côte d'Ivoire and Sikasso are being unloaded under the watchful eyes of traders. Sitting under a tent, this avocado importer from Côte d'Ivoire is unloading his goods. He spent 3 days on the road before reaching Bamako due to the blockade imposed on the Malian capital by JNIM fighters.
I left Côte d'Ivoire just yesterday with goods. The last time was extremely difficult. On April 25, terrorists blocked the road for 3 days, making it impossible to transport our products to Bamako. I lost almost most of the avocados I was carrying, valued around 4 million CFA francs. We are trying to recover little by little, but it's not easy because customers are becoming scarce.
For drivers, each trip is now a source of concern Arriving from Sikasso, this truck driver describes the difficulties he faced on the road.
La route qui relie Sikasso
The road linking Sikasso to Bamako is very dangerous, and some drivers are afraid to use it. Sometimes, terrorists block the road for the entire day, but when Malayan military patrols arrive, they disappear. While traveling yesterday, I saw at least 3 vehicles burned along the roadside. But fortunately, we did not encounter the attackers ourselves. We are really afraid. Often we travel without assistance, and every joining on that road comes with huge risks.
beaucoup de risques que nous empruntons cet axe.
Despite the difficulties, trucks carrying goods continue to arrive in the Malian capital. However, in the market, traders and customers are anxiously watching the situation unfold. There are fears that further deterioration in road situation could trigger price spikes or shortages in the coming weeks.
WDI's Aliu Cham filed a report presented by Abdullahi Hassan. Meanwhile, the Nigerian army has rejected reports alleging civilian casualties during recent airstrikes it conducted in the northwest region. The army, in a statement on Wednesday, denied any confirmed civilian casualties, insisting the operation was based on credible intelligence and only targeted armed groups. The issue also drew international concern, with the UN Human Rights Chief calling for independent investigations into the reported strikes carried out by Nigerian and Chadian forces. Osman Omar reports.
UN Rights Chief Volker Turk said he was shocked by the reports and urged both Nigeria and Chad to conduct prompt and impartial investigations. He also raised concerns over Chadian airstrikes targeting Boko Haram camps around the Lake Chad region, where dozens of Nigerian fishermen were reportedly killed. Turk said such military operations, including against Boko Haram and the so-called Islamic State West Africa province, must be conducted in full compliance with international humanitarian law and international human rights law. But Nigeria's military has denied reports of civilian deaths, insisting the airstrike targeted militant leaders based on intelligence reports. Military spokesperson Major General Michael Onoja says no verified evidence of civilian casualties has been established, adding that several terrorists were neutralized in the operation. Recall, Amnesty International reported that at least 100 civilians were killed in the May 10 airstrikes that targeted a crowded market in Zamfara state.
Usman Omar reporting. Elsewhere, the United Nations Secretary General has renewed calls for Africa to gain fair representation among the permanent members of the UN Security Council. Antonio Guterres said reforming the Security Council is not about symbolism, but about ensuring the global body remains credible, effective, and responsive to today's realities. He made these remarks at the 10th African Union United Nations high-level dialogue in Addis Ababa. Imodel tells us more.
Antonio Guterres described the partnership between the African Union and the United Nations as one of the world's most strategic alliances for advancing peace, development, and human rights across the African continent. The UN chief, who noted that the summit could be his final meeting with African leaders in his current role, nevertheless assured the continent of continued UN support for Africa's development ambitions and institutional reforms. Following closed-door discussions and a working lunch, the AU and UN both sides signed a joint declaration reaffirming several commitments. They include multilateral cooperation, African-led solutions, sustainable development, peace, security, and the protection of human rights. Addressing the media at the end of the joint session, Guterres condemned foreign interference in African conflicts, accusing external actors of supplying weapons and political backing to fuel instability for strategic and economic gain. Local media reports that the UN Secretary General later held talks with senior African Union officials and French President Emmanuel Macron. Discussions reportedly focus on reforms to global governance and international financial systems affecting African countries, as well as the conflict in the Middle East and its implications for the African continent.
Imo Eden reporting. Gambian President Adama Barrow has welcomed Senegal's newly appointed Chief of Defense Staff, Admiral Omar Wadr, at the State House in Banjul. The visit, Admiral Wad's first official foreign trip since taking office, focused on strengthening security and bilateral cooperation between the Gambia and Senegal. President Barrow described the visit as a sign of the strong historical ties linking the two neighboring countries and stressed the need for continued dialogue to promote peace and stability. Admiral Wadr, in turn, thanked the Gambian leader for the warm reception and reaffirmed his commitment to deeper cooperation between the two nations.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
As a reminder, we are live online at wadr.org. Now, looking politics and electoral matters, the main opposition political party in Cote d'Ivoire is stepping up its political campaign and posturing in the aftermath of the October 25 presidential elections. The Democratic Party of Cote d'Ivoire, PDCI-RDA, has also spoken extensively on the country's current socio-political climate, addressing growing speculation over a possible alliance with the ruling RHDP party. The party's latest stance comes amid renewed calls for major reforms of the Independent Electoral Commission. Here is a report by WDR's Abuja correspondent Marcel Aristinble and presented by Vernick Njai.
Speaking to both national and international media, Bredumi Soumaila, spokesperson of the Democratic Party of Cote d'Ivoire, PDCI-RDA, stated that the possibility of an alliance or political compromise with the ruling party or any other political formation is not currently under consideration.
We have opponents and not enemies. We continue to hold discussions and consistently call for dialogue that includes all the major political parties on the issues faced in the country. In this context, political parties including the RHDP and others can sit around the same table. So we are open to dialogue, but we are not here to undermine ourselves, place ourselves at the service of or align ourselves with any political party whatsoever. That needs to be clear.
Commenting further on the announced dissolution of the Independent Electoral Commission and its planned restructuring, Soumaila called for an inclusive political dialogue. He stressed that broad consultation involving all key national stakeholders remain essential for the country's democratic process.
If we are calling for dialogue, why are we consulting one another? It is because we have proposals to put forward, but we believe there are individuals, and such people do exist, who can separate themselves from attachments to administrative careers. At some point, there needs to be an assessment. These are the kinds of issues we want to discuss with the ruling party, other political parties, and civil society so that we can reach common ground on them.
The PDCI-RDA, one of the oldest and most influential political parties in Cote d'Ivoire, reaffirmed its determination to remain vigilant on democratic and institutional issues ahead of future elections. The statement comes as political tensions continue following the exclusion of the party's presidential candidate Tijan Cham from the October 2025 presidential election over issues linked to his dual citizenship.
Vernick Njai with that report filed by our Abidjan, not Abuja correspondent, instead Marcel Aristinble. Now, the United Nations Development Programme, alongside the UN Electoral Assistance Division and the African Disability Alliance, is organizing a major conference in Dakar on the inclusion of persons with disabilities in Africa's electoral processes. The conference brings together election bodies, policymakers, disability rights groups, and development partners to address barriers to political participation and promote more inclusive elections across the continent. Speaking to WADR, UNDP Regional Governance and Rule of Law Advisor David Amozwafo highlights the concern over commitment by African countries to ratify and implement disability inclusion policies.
The gap majorly is the gap between policies and implementation. There is the UN Convention on People Living with Disabilities, which the 54 member states of the African Union ratified. Then there is the African Union Protocol on People with Disabilities, which only 17 countries have ratified. I would wish to see that all the 54 member states of African Union go further to demonstrate commitment to making a change, not only in adopting these policies, but in implementing them. But first, we have to ratify it. Why would we have 54 countries ratifying that of the United Nations, and the one that is their own, only 17 countries. What happens to the rest? There is gap between commitment and delivering of those commitments. I want to see that all the African Union member states ratify the African Union Protocol on people living with disabilities and implement those protocols. This is the major gap.
That was David Omozwafo, UNDP Regional Governance and Rule of Law Advisor. You're listening to Newslink here on West Africa, the Macross Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal online at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Togolese security and defense forces received military hardware from Middle East to enhance operations. Nigerian army denies any civilian casualties in recent airstrikes in northwest Zamfara state. External sessions of ECOWAS Court of Justice gets underway in Conakry to review regional litigation cases. And still ahead in the news, President Mahama commissions new health facility to end overseas medical trips. We also have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Conakry, the Guinean capital, is hosting an external session of the ECOWAS Court of Justice with set goals of raising awareness among the public and institutional stakeholders about the mission, jurisdiction, and functioning of the regional court. During its stay in Conakry, the court will examine more than 20 cases, mainly involving alleged human rights violations within the West African community space. As Augustine Coley reports, the session began yesterday.
For the first time, Guinea is hosting an outreach section of the ECOWAS Court of Justice, bringing the regional court closer to citizens and institutions in Conakry. The event has drawn journalists, security personnel, civil society groups, lawyers, and law students for a series of technical discussions, public forums, and presentations highlighting the mandate and operations of the regional court. According to Dr. Yausa Urosama, Chief Registrar of the ECOWAS Court of Justice, the initiative is designed to deepen public understanding of the institution and its role within the sub-region.
Although the court has existed since 2001, many citizens within the community are still unaware of its existence, its mandate, its jurisdiction, its procedures and its practices. The most prominent mandate of the ECOWAS Court of Justice is related to human rights.
Guinea's Minister of Justice and Human Rights, Ibrahima Sori II Tonkara, praised the decision to hold a session in Conakry while reaffirming Guinea's commitment to ECOWAS and its regional institutions.
A report by Channel Alpha Ibrahim Balde and presented by Augustine Coley. In Ghana, President John Dramani Mahama has inaugurated a modern PET scan facility in the Swedish Ghana Medical Center in Accra. President Mahama says the project is a major breakthrough in country's drive toward world-class healthcare services. The Ghanaian leader said the new center would spare many citizens the burden of traveling abroad for advanced medical diagnosis and treatment. These trips, according to him, often comes with heavy financial, emotional and psychological cost for patients and their families. The facility is expected to strengthen early disease detection, improve treatment outcomes and position Ghana as a growing hub for specialized healthcare services in the West African sub-region.
For far too long, many Ghanaians requiring advanced diagnostic services of this nature have had to travel abroad, often at an enormous financial, emotional, and psychological cost to them and their families. Families have had to raise substantial sums of money for overseas medical referrals. Patients have endured delay in diagnosis and treatment because the necessary technology was unavailable locally. Today we make a bold national statement that this facility must not only make it unnecessary for Ghanaians to seek such services abroad, but also make Ghana a hub for specialist medical services in our West.
Ghanaian President John Dramani Mahama speaking there. Well, in neighboring Liberia, the Minister of Justice defended the government anti-corruption drive following a split verdict in a high-profile $6 million corruption case involving former officials of ex-President George Weah's administration. While some defendants were acquitted and others convicted, the trial has reignited a national debate over accountability, transparency, and management of public funds. However, during the trial, the Supreme Court ruled that neither claims of national security nor presidential orders can protect public officials from prosecution. In Burkina Faso, a call from the Minister of Culture has not gone unnoticed on social media. Gilbert Ouedraogo is urging lounges, relaxation spots, and entertainment centers to promote Burkinabe music in line with the current policy on the consumption of local products. This appeal has been welcomed by stakeholders in the Burkinabe showbiz industry. Christopher Atichi has the rest of the details.
At a drinking spot in Bobo Djaloso, the Minister of Culture reprimands a disc joker. Joby Ouedraogo says he is not pleased, insisting that he has observed that the bar is not promoting Burkinabe music.
Because I have particularly noticed that your bar has been playing only imported music since around December. Every time I come to Bobo, it is always foreign music.
However, the Minister of Culture says he had already given instructions for a nationwide awareness campaign targeting bars and restaurants on the issue.
We have great artists today producing very good music, yet you continue to ignore them. That is not normal. If you go to other countries, you can spend an entire day without even hearing foreign music.
This intervention is welcomed by stakeholders in Burkina Faso's showbiz industry. According to producer and art critic David Heve Onla, beyond drinking establishments, the awareness campaign should extend to all music lovers in Burkina Faso.
Burkinabe music covers every style. There is reggae, Kopi de Kale, Burkinabe Zongulu, Makosa. Everything is being done. There is even Burkinabe Amapiano that truly reflects our local music and rhythms. So I do not understand why people say Burkinabe music cannot be played in public places.
For Minister Joby Ouedraogo, this intervention is expected to promote national identity beyond just music. He is also calling on Burkinabe citizens to consume local products in general.
Christopher Atichi with that report by our Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest this evening is Tawon Gongolo, a rights activist and anti-graft campaigner in Liberia. He speaks to us about the face-off between a group of civil society actors and the Ministry of Justice over the so-called controversial conviction of former officials under the immediate past administration. In ruling by a criminal court in Monrovia, the principal accused the person, the former finance minister, was acquitted, sparking wave of protest and speculation over complexity in the justice system. However, in an address on Wednesday, Justice Minister Oswald Twe defended the government's anti-graft measures but said an investigation will be launched to review the matter. But is this convincing enough for transparency and accountability advocates? Google explain.
Yesterday I was lecturing at the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission on how to prepare a good anti-corruption case. Don't rush with it. It's not based on public pressure. It should not be a political action. It must be guided by the law and the evidence. Once the jurors do not feel that a good case has been established normally, they will not find the accused guilty. In this case, they found 3 persons guilty and 2 persons not guilty. That is not strange. It happens. I prosecuted 11 persons before in a military trial for attempting to overthrow government, and 4 of them were generals. 2 of the generals were acquitted, and the 9 were found guilty. So this has happened. What needs to be looked at is whether or not the state established a good case and whether or not the defense had a strong defense. But nobody can question the jury when the jury reaches its decision unless you can prove that there was something unethical about the process. But even then, that has to be raised before the case ends.
That said, the Minister of Justice, Oswald, has promised that the government, through the ministry, will revisit the process from the very start through the court. And that could be part of efforts now to prove to the public that indeed the government is head-on with the fight against corruption. Do you think this will restore in any way public trust and confidence in the system?
That's a bit difficult. I can understand where he's coming from. And as a strong anti-corruption campaigner myself, and having worked at the same justice ministry as solicitor, and being frustrated in the anti-corruption fight myself, because I was the first Solicitor General to prosecute a former head of state for corruption. I was the late Judith Bryan. We were equally disappointed, but the law is the law. We have clear procedures. The state cannot appeal. We also have a strong law backed by the Constitution, Article 21H, that prohibits double jeopardy, that you cannot prosecute the same person twice for the same offense or punish one person twice for the same offense. That law is very strong. It comes from the common law. So as much as the Justice Ministry want to do anything, it has to be consistent with the Constitution and the criminal procedure law of Liberia.
Tion Gonglo is a rights activist and anti-graft campaigner in Liberia. Well, in sports, Cameroon's Emmanuel Ezem has claimed his first continental title after winning the men's 100 meters at the 2026 African Athletics Championship in Accra, Ghana. In the women's category, first goal at the African Championship, Tobi Amusan has secured Nigeria's first gold medal at the 2026 African Nations Championship in Accra, winning the women's 100-meter hurdles in 12.83 seconds. Meanwhile, Nigeria has made an impressive start to the 2026 African Senior Athletics Championship in Accra, winning 8 medals after the first 2 days of the competition. Team Nigeria's medal haul includes 2 gold, 3 silver and 3 bronze medals across various tracks and field events. In football, Angola held former finalist Mali to a goalless draw in their opening Group C match at the 2026 Under-17 AFCON in Morocco early today, Thursday. Angola keeper Gelson Dalla delivered a standout performance with several key saves to earn his side a valuable point and claim the Man of the Match award. We've come to the other destination of Newslink on West Africa, the Macross Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maudo Juve for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English. I am Sankula Jibril Janko. Good evening.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County, and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Baft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to News